Hi guys, today I'm going to talk about a game that's kind of niche and underground. Not sure if you guys have heard of it. Bayonetta series. Back when this came out in 2009, I didn't expect Bayonetta to blow up. It's still not insanely recognizable now, but if you told me then that Bayonetta would be in Smash Bros, I'd be in complete disbelief. The Bayonetta series has got to be one of the craziest hack and slashes out there. The games all have fast, responsive combat and feature catchy soundtracks, and then when the gameplay takes a backseat, you have to sit through the most unfathomable and over-the-top cutscenes you'll ever see in your life.
Do you naughty little angels deserve a good spanking?
Now, this of course isn't a bad thing. The cutscenes usually match the style of the gameplay, where things are happening so fast that you can't really process what they're talking about, but you just roll with it. However, Bayonetta 3 requires you to sit through nonsensical shit for what feels like a decade. While Bayonetta 1 and 2 do have this problem as well, Bayonetta 3 has it the worst. What I expected from this series is for each game to continue to peak and evolve with each title, but Bayonetta 3's tendency to shove some garbage story down your throat is what pulls it down the most. What I want to do with this video is briefly evaluate each title in the trilogy and go through their strong points and their downsides. What you're probably going to notice is that I'm heavily biased towards Bayonetta 1, which isn't great when you're trying to be critical. I'm going to try my hardest though. Out of the 3 games, Bayonetta 1 is the game I have the most hours in. I've replayed it on every platform it's on, and I think a lot of it still holds up today. Like I said before, the combat system's great. Obviously, if you love Devil May Cry, you'll likely be familiar with hack and slash combat, and love it, considering that Hideki Kamiya directed the first Devil May Cry as well. The combat system is responsive, fluid, and has a lot of flair. The combat system by itself has so much personality injected into it. There's lots of combos and different combo routes you can go down. For example, if I wanted Bayonetta to do a wicked weave, I could do a punch kick punch. But if I want to experiment a bit and try doing the kick after 2 more punches, I could get an entirely different move. I could also pause for a second just after doing 3 punches and perform another punch to get a wicked weave that punches enemies upwards. There's lots of room for experimentation here, and you're highly rewarded for it. Aside from just looking cool, the witch time mechanic also gives you space to experiment and get more familiar with combos. However, it's worth noting that the practice mode in the loading screens is quite missable. If you're playing on older consoles or on an old hard drive, you might get the chance to use the practice mode, but if you're playing on something with an SSD, you probably will miss it. The game doesn't tell you that you can stop these loading screens by pressing the select button either. If you didn't know that, well, now you know. There's a good selection of weapons you can choose from. Some are harder to get than others, but are worth getting and worth replaying the game with. The one weapon that I'm not especially fond of is the Rodan weapon. It's just not fun to use compared to everything else, and that was just so depressing after spending so much time trying to beat a bullshit boss for it that you also have to grind for. I think if you're a really hardcore Bayonetta fan and enjoy how torturous the non-stop infinite climax mode is, you'll probably not mind it. And on that note, I think it's probably a good time to talk about the difficulty. Normal difficulty provides a balanced experience as you'd expect, but the easy difficulties are really strange to me. So on very easy and easy, you may notice this little text underneath that says automatic. It literally means that you press one button and the game just starts dodging and pulling out combos for you. You could literally play the game with one hand. Just look at this, I'm only pressing the triangle button right now. Somewhere in there I apparently pressed circle or the right bumper. To be clear, the automatic combos is because playing on these difficulties will automatically equip an item on you called the Immortal Marionette. This item does all of the combos for you and regenerates health for you constantly, bit by bit. The enemies are also a bit slower in this difficulty. I don't think it's that bad. I guess if you want it to be more cinematic, it's an option, but it doesn't help you learn the combat at all. I think the one good thing about it is seeing Bayonetta perform all of these crazy combos might encourage players to learn the combat system. Very easy and easy are obviously there for accessibility, but if you're playing this for the first time, I'd highly recommend playing on normal. Your health and magic are also locked on easy and very easy, meaning you don't get the chance to access the game's Alfheim portals, which are challenges that unlock upgrades on normal difficulty and above. To summarize, you are missing out if you pick very easy and easy, so if you can, play through on normal difficulty first. Hard difficulty is what you'd expect. Faster enemies, more damage dealt by enemies, and less damage dealt by you. You might also get harder enemies earlier on in the game. Non-stop infinite climax difficulty is just all of that, but even harder and without witch time. When you try this difficulty for the first time with the prologue chapter, it puts the same tutorial as normal, only to tell you that there's no witch time. For me personally, this difficulty sucks horse cock, but I'm sure seasoned players will welcome the challenge. I've talked a lot about gameplay, mainly because it's the meat of the game. I strongly advise against playing this game for its story, because it barely makes sense and is very weak.
We used to play together as friends.
I've played this game so many times and I can barely tell you what's going on. If you're really interested, Bayonetta's trying to find out more about her past because she was stuck in a casket in a lake for 500 years and has amnesia. She's killing angels because she has a contract with demons and she has to appease them. You don't need to know anything else. Even though the story in Bayonetta 1 is unnecessary, you can still watch the cutscenes and enjoy a lot of it. There's a part in the game where an angel disguised as Bayonetta takes the razor from you while you're summoning a demon to kill a giant angel who is also a nonce. You chase the clone through its fucking security laser system, and then you have a dance-off to get Cereza back. You fight her for a short while before she does this. Even if you're disinterested in the story, the crazy shit happening on screen matches the vibes of the gameplay and is usually very funny. When I think the story is bad, it's more of a nitpick than an actual issue. I'd say a bigger issue is the person on the team who thought having a camera spin when you do a fucking barrel roll was a good idea. So, take all of the strong points of Bayonetta 1 and remove majority of the flaws I talked about, and you have Bayonetta 2. Genuinely, Bayonetta 2 is so refined and polished compared to Bayonetta 1. The combat is even more fluid and exciting, despite being more accessible. You get to fight demons as well as angels now too. The levels are also incredibly vibrant and beautiful to look at. You might have noticed that some of the footage I showed earlier looked a bit brighter than what Bayonetta 1 usually has, and that's because I had a color mod on. This isn't a massive issue, but the flat color scheme in that game is now gone. Remember the practice mode issue that I talked about earlier? Well, now they've just added a practice mode in the menu for you. Remember the barrel roll issue I talked about earlier? Well, that's been completely fixed. Everything has been elevated, from the boss fights to the visuals and the music. And best of all, they took out that stupid angel attack minigame. The story is still strange and arguably the same as Bayonetta 1's with slight changes, but like Bayonetta 1, it's worth sitting through the cutscenes for its spectacles. I think the only con is Loki existing, to be honest.
Shite. I'm never gonna reach Fimbulventa at this rate.
Like I said earlier, Bayonetta 3 should have peaked. I was hyped about this game for years, so it just hurts so much that this game falls so far behind Bayonetta 1 and 2. The combat is still great, there's no doubt about that. There's still a lot of style and loads of possibilities for combos, especially with the Demon Masquerade ability and how you can summon a demon during combos for extra damage. But all of this cool content is just stumped on by this idiotic multiverse story that they're trying to tell.
They're like locusts, spreading through the multiverse. Bayonetta, Jean, you both have to help.
Yeah, my reaction, to be honest. It's not like there aren't enjoyable moments in cutscenes anymore, just that it takes so long to get to them. And then when you do get past the cutscenes, sometimes you're fiddling with the controls as you solve some of the most tedious puzzles in the series. The enemies just look boring too. They ramble on about gathering these orbs, and then another version of Bayonetta just dies, and then you have to fight this ugly cum monster while trying to find Bayonetta. The camera has always been a bit crazy, but it's a lot worse in this game. In Bayonetta 1, I ended up learning to listen for audio cues and looking out for the sparkle thing, so I knew when to dodge instead of just watching the enemies closely. But this was mainly for harder difficulties since they move so damn fast on Non-Stop Infinite Climax, where you can't even use witch time to reorient yourself. In Bayonetta 3, it was such a struggle. I can't even see the glint or hear the audio cue because there's so much going on. Bayonetta 3 isn't a terrible game, but it's lacking in so many areas. Its worst mistake was betraying the style of Bayonetta 1 and 2 storytelling. It has the longest cutscenes compared to 1 and 2, and manages to have the least amount of story in it. It is a convoluted mess and prevents its cutscenes from being entertaining. Even if you exclude the story from it, some of its craziest battle verses end up being slow and underwhelming. If I had to nitpick at Bayonetta 3, I could say a lot, but I think my primary nitpick here is Viola. This is the second time that they've added an annoying younger character who's essential to the plot. Loki is British and that's bad enough, but Viola just hurts to listen to and play as.
How Don't make me say it again! My name is Viola! V-I-O-L fucking A! Viola!
Bayonetta 3 is a game with Bayonetta's mechanics, with the story talking very loudly over it. Bayonetta 1 and 2 are both masterpieces, but unfortunately Bayonetta 3 will always be the weakest in the series. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. We're getting very close to Christmas now, and the start of a new year, so I think I should let Bayonetta finish this one.
There's only one way to ring in the new year. Let's dance, boys!